Let's first now, though, take a look at some of the newspaper front pages before we talk to our guests. The Times reports that under a new border plan, passengers arriving here will not need to present their passports. Instead, they will all use electronic gates and facial recognition.
The Daily Mail leads with the latest revelation that gender's official documents can be altered with just a doctor's note.
The Daily Mirror says that 71% of those taking part in a survey support the legalisation of assisted dying.
The Daily Express says in the past year, 1 in 5 GP appointments in England lasted under 5 minutes.
And the Eye leads with the exclusive story that the growing use of lie detector tests by police forces may be unlawful. Joining us now to go through some of the day's headlines. They've been so good, getting up lovely and early for us. Lawyer and futurist.
Hi, thank you. It's got to be good.
Andrew Eborn.
Good morning.
Former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire. A very good morning to you both.
We're ready for more in 24, and I tell you what, you two have been brilliant to get up so early.
Oh,
and it's
thank you so much. Andrew, front of the Times,
yes.
This facial recognition at the border, it's very futuristic, isn't it?
Well, I love it, and as indeed predicted, as you know, I talk around the world about the future and what's going to happen, how we should embrace technology. It is nonsense to walk around with a little book and you show people that sort of stuff. So this is the future. It's something we've been talking about forever, about facial recognition, and this is going to be the solution to all sorts of things. If you look at most people's wallets, they're carrying all sorts of cards, whether it's to do that sort of stuff. You can have one device which can basically connect all of that. And actually your best way of identifying things is through your face. I worked for many years for Fujifilm, who basically did this sort of facial recognition side. And they say even after plastic surgery, there are parts of your face that never, ever, ever change. So it is the most secure way of identifying anybody. And what this particular report says, they're talking about frictionless travel. So it's very good. It's intelligent borders. And basically, Phil Douglas is the Director General of Border Force. That's what he's looked at. He went to Dubai, and they say, look, this is what they've got. You go in there, and they recognise what it is, and it's brilliant.
So are you saying you shouldn't need to carry your passport?
I'm saying you shouldn't need to carry it. I'm going even further than this, is what I'm going to say. I reckon you don't need to carry most of the stuff you carry.
Andrew,
Scarlett.
just wait until the gates go down. I mean,
that's exactly what I was
how
going to say.
many times have I just remember going through Stansted after midnight, coming back from Jordan and waiting an hour because the electronic gates weren't working and we had to show our passports. So, you know, it's all fine until it goes wrong.
Oh, but you're absolutely right, Scott. And what do I know? Scott and I have been having so much fun in the green room. I say that's where the show needs to start earlier.
New Year's party.
We've just absolute joy. But you're absolutely right. But all that's doing is then taking you back to the existing system.
Yes.
So if this is better and it works in a really efficient way, which it does in Dubai, that's the future.
No, I think it's great. And I mean, I remember going to Australia and being really frightened because I didn't have a visa in my passport. But actually, somehow, they chipped it.
Yes.
So you just do what you went straight through the electronic gates. No, everything's brilliant.
Yes.
Until the electrics goes wrong.
Oh, no, absolutely.
That's all.
And that's the thing. People are so dependent on their electronic devices, and then people don't back up. The one thing in New Year, you should back up all your data on your computers, on your phone, and everything else. Because when it goes down, people are robbed, aren't they, of their identity?
Carry your passport.
But it's a little bit Big Brother is watching you.
Oh, absolutely.
Facial recognition gates at the airport.
Absolutely. Oh, and that's the scary moment, because they're now predicting things like shoplifting. There's a big scandal last year. They say, well, hang about, that person's got this sort of the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they look. They could be a potential shoplifter.
Well,
are you comfortable with that?
I'm very comfortable. I'm very comfortable with Big Brother.
Says Big Brother spying on you.
Well, I think the reality is people are so obsessed. We used to have an obsession about identity cards. You remember that? People used to say, I'm not going to carry an identity card. The reality is we already do. Every time you have your shop loyalty card, every time you use a credit card, these mobile phones in your pocket, we can pinpoint people already.
But the problem with facial recognition is it's really for white people. I mean, there is a real problem with colour, and it's because it's not sophisticated enough. So I think we do need to think hard about it.
And also, this is only one country doing it, or a couple of countries doing it so far, so you're still going to realistically have to carry a passport with you for the time being.
Oh, yeah.
Because not every country's going to have facial recognition.
Well, also, you're going to have to carry your passport for when it all goes wrong.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, you know, it is. And can I say that all of this sounds great? I have a passport that spells my name incorrectly. My driving licence spells it incorrectly in a different way. My credit cards spell it incorrectly again. I mean, for those of us...
So your passport's got spelling errors in it?
Yep.
And it's still
my driving licence, I'm having real problems with my driving licence at the moment. Yeah. And when I went to have it renewed, they said, and I said, do you think I can have it spelt properly? And they went, only if you bring your birth certificate. And I thought, no, I just need a new passport.
And isn't that shocking, though? Because Maguire has got 2 C's and a G.
And a W.
And a W. It's rather like Eborn. We normally put too many vowels in. There's always a vowel movement somewhere.
Yes.
But what you have to work on that sort of basis, I find it extraordinary that your documents can all be different, because that's the whole point of documents, to make sure they can identify you.
I know.
Whereas your face, there's only one face. And I think that's the important. I hope. Although it is the Labour Party.
Andrew, I think that's a bit much.
I would have a funny turn every time I looked at my passport if my name was spelt wrongly.
Yes.
Because my name gets spelt wrongly, you know, the rest everywhere else.
How can you spell Pip wrong? How does that work?
Well, do you know what? On air, it always used to be Philippa, but nobody can spell Philippa. Or not in the way I like Philippa to be spelled. So then it became Pip, because I thought no one could get that wrong. But my surname, like your surname, is a blooming nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is a complete... And I can spell it out to people and watch them spelling it wrong. And I never know how anybody's going to spell it.
You'd think there'd be more checks with a legal document, wouldn't you?
You think?
Yes.
You would think.
Scarlett, let's move on to a story in The Guardian.
Right.
Doctors told to consider the risk of air pollution when assessing patients.
I mean, this is Great Ormond Street Hospital, who's saying that they realise that actually when they get children in with lung problems or with breathing problems, that they need to know where these children live, because there are heavy air pollution things. I mean, you know, I think it's air pollution kills 7 million people a year globally. I'm not saying in Britain. It is really important. It's something that we don't take seriously enough, and instead we sort of make jokes about ULEZ and destroying ULEZ cameras. But actually, I mean, I remember years ago, because I'm a lot older than you, that it was about lead in petrol, and lead in petrol was actually killing children, and that's why they got rid of it. And I think now that we need it, and what Great Ormond Street are saying, and this is all came about because of Ella Adu Kissi Deborah, who died when she was 9, and the coroner said it was because of air pollution, because she had asthma. And her mum said that had she known it was a bad place to live, they would have moved. And so it's actually giving information to people to say, you've got a sick child and you need to move.
And is this just Great Ormond Street Hospital or doctors across the country?
No, this is Great Ormond Street Hospital saying we need to think about this.
And what we should do is actually, going back to technology, the information is out there. Information is power. The more that doctors can share that information, what I believe in, and again, I predict this for the future, is every doctor's surgery anywhere in the world should have access to a central resource to say, this is what happens. They're from this area, therefore ask these questions. I'm working with an organisation called Science with Soul, which is looking at exactly that. And they're saying that sometimes very serious things like cancer and so on and so forth, they could have got earlier diagnosis if they'd known that there were risks.
Right.
And I think if you work on that sort of basis, so it's not just air pollution. Well, I'm pleased to raise this story. It's right that you should look at that. But there are many other things that you can do. And I think in the future, the more that we can look at this sort of information is power, prevention is so much better than cure.
But it's looking at different geographic locations, isn't it? Because clearly, if you're in an inner-city hospital, there potentially is going to be more air pollution, whereas if you're in the country, there's going to be less air pollution.
Yeah, but so Great Ormond Street obviously has lots and lots of children from London. I mean, it also has children from around the country, lots of children from London, and it is where are you based in London? So where I live is. It's Islington, it's inner city, but it's regional. But actually, the biggest problem is from wood-burning stoves.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, darling, the middle classes.
So many.
They are really, really polluting, and nobody's going to do anything about it.
Well, we are going to do it, because we're going to talk about things. And I think if we look at that sort of basis, but I do go back to the whole point about prevention being better than cure. And I know some tragic cases. People have contacted me about some cancers within their family, and they didn't have to share the information. But if they had, if the doctor knew that there might be some risks, they could have done earlier tests on that sort of thing. So we do need to look at these areas, and I do think basically technology and the advances that we have, the tremendous advances in AI and various other things, that's the way to do it. Data is power.
Data is power.
So this is a pilot scheme by doctors at Great Ormond Street, but, you know, if this works, it's quite conceivable.
Oh yeah,
loads of other
and it's. I mean, there are loads of places around the country, and you're right. If you live in the middle of nowhere, you're probably okay. But I mean, most people live in towns and cities.
They live in the middle of somewhere,
and you need to know about the pollution.
Okay, Andrew, take us to the Telegraph, please.
Yes, as though we need another war. I mean, whilst I absolutely get, as Defence Secretary, you have to be powerful and make very strong statements, what Shapps is saying is UK is ready to attack the Houthi rebels in this sort of situation. And they're considering airstrikes on Houthi rebels, as the Defence Secretary warned that UK would not hesitate to take direct action over their attacks on cargo ships. It is the language of war. He's being very tough on this sort of stuff. And obviously the US in the similar sort of position. But what are we going to do? There's all these conflicts around the world.
Well,
He's trying to work on that sort of resolution.
Canterbury, in his New Year address, has said, hasn't he, that it feels like there's a war everywhere.
I mean, he's absolutely right. So you think an airstrike? I mean, we know from Gaza what an airstrike is. Airstrikes kill lots and lots of innocent people, right? I mean, there's no question about it. Let's have another war. Let's go into the Gulf and cause more problems. I mean, you know, because it was so successful, wasn't it, when we went into Afghanistan? Look at where it is now. When we went into Iraq, I think we need to be thinking rather harder before we say let's release the bombs.
But that depends on all sides being willing to negotiate and being in the same mindset as you. And the problem is that all sides aren't in the same place,
but I'm not sure what bombing... I mean, bombing just causes more problems.
No, you're right. But I think what's happening, and same with Rwanda, the whole idea of Rwanda is not to send people to Rwanda at all. It's always been that sort of horrible buzzword. It's to stop people. So when Shapps comes out with the language of war, the hope is that they will stop people doing it. It's a deterrent. And I think it's rather like the nuclear button. Nobody wants to press that and all the horrible things that would happen. But if we didn't have that deterrent, it may not stop people. Let's see if this language of war, which is what he's got, if that will work.
And do you think Scarlett Grant Shapps does have that instant respect as Defence Secretary?
No, because look how many jobs he's had. I mean, I think there certainly have been worse defence secretaries in the last few years, and I do think, to be fair on Grant Shapps, that he moves slowly, that he isn't the first thing. But I mean, it really, really bothers me that we've got this bellicose language that is not backed up. And you think, you know, I mean.
But you can't have cargo ships being attacked in the Red Sea.
No, you can't have. No, that's right. But I'm not sure that saying we're going to bomb you is a deterrent.
So what would you do, Scarlett? What would you do?
I would do what I do. You have to get people round a table. I just don't think that bombing cities actually works. I think because you live with the consequences for years afterwards.
And wars, of course, create refugees.
Exactly.
And we don't want them. I mean,
we don't want wars, but we want deterrence, and that's the whole point, isn't it? So you have to threaten things to get people around the table.
Well, except
it's not working, is it?
If you don't, you have to follow your threats through. And I remember, I was on Michelle's programme talking about refugees, and she said, why do we have to pick up all the problems that we've caused? And you think, that's the problem, is we cause these problems. I mean, a lot of refugees are escaping war, right, who are coming across the Channel. I mean, you know, I've had a Yemeni refugee living with me. Well, you know, it's not fun.
Well, climate, they say, climate change is a cause for refugees as well.
Oh, yeah.
Fleeing their countries. I mean, it is such a global problem, and we ain't going to solve it in this conversation, are we? But it is an interesting talking point. Andrew Eborn is here with Fake or Fact.
Absolute joy, and it's a little teaser. I love to tease my little bit, you know. It's all gone. Oh, you were piles. I love seeing you giggling up. Glorious moment. What we're going to do, this is going to be the best feel-good start to 2023. I've got fantastic news about a new Joker movie with Timothée Chalamet. You remember him from Wonka? Brilliant.
Oh, yes.
Speed 3 with Keanu Reeves. Can you believe it? I have the world's biggest cat, avoiding every possible carry-on joke ever. And I've also got some brilliant seismic news news from the world of medicine. A woman who can see and speak for the first time in their 18 years, and the power of sight for over 1,000 people. All coming up on Andrew Eborn's Fake or Fact.
Wow, Andrew, looking forward to all of that. Amazing.
They're going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces, scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK. Here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Pip and Cameron on GB News.
It's time for another episode of Andrew Eborn's Fake or Fact, and we're wondering what you're going to be talking to us about.
What a joy. I've loved today's show. Come on, this is so good. Your viral moment with your pals has gone everywhere.
Well, I don't know about
really
that. Some people hated it, which, you know, fair enough, but sit here and I defy people not to laugh.
Absolutely.
If they'd have been doing that interview.
I think you're absolutely right. Well done you for keeping a straight face for part of it, because once you go, don't you? What I loved, as predicted at the beginning of this year, AI, artificial intelligence, has been all over the place. And 2023, last year, was basically the moment that people realised the power of it. Now, you might remember in March of 2023, we had the picture. We worked out that the devil loves Prada, but the Pope prefers a puffer. And this is one of the pictures here. We could just pull him up, because this went viral. This was the moment that people realised the power. Do you remember that picture?
Yes.
Well, it's glorious stuff. And people suddenly think, well, there's the pontiff doing that sort of stuff. What happened also from basically 2017 to 2022 1982, the Elizabeth Tower and Big Ben had a big reconstruction. It cost about £80 million. And basically, to help deflect it, they did a sponsorship deal with these people here, which is actually a video here, because it was inspired by that as well. And you can see that there. They've got a big jacket on, a North Face jacket. And you can see it's a video. You've got people recording it and so on and so forth. And that helped defer the cost of the 80 million. And basically, there was all done from the gilt cross and orb at the very top to the bottom of the 334 steps. So there you go. Is that fake or fact?
The Elizabeth Tower one looks so real because the camera's zooming in. You've got the lamppost in the foreground, all the people, tourists taking selfies. But surely that's not real. I feel like I would know if that actually happened.
OK, interesting. Pip?
To be different, I'll say it's fact.
It's fact. Well, and Pip is absolutely wrong. It was in fact. It was in fact.
There's a shock.
There is a shock. So it's a point for Cameron. Fantastic stuff.
Yes.
Next up, I think these are very easy. We have, in fact, talking about the Pope and one of my poster boys for fake or fact. The person who invented fake news is the glorious Donald Trump. He sometimes hits the news. We've got a picture of him. Here's Donald Trump with the Pope. And I think you probably know, this is the moment he was given a papal audience. Do you think that's fake or fact?
I just can't imagine that happening. For those radio listeners, Donald Trump and the Pope are embracing each other, and I just don't think that would happen.
You don't think he would? And you remember he was a bit touchy with the Queen, Her Majesty, the previous Queen. Do you remember he was a bit hands-on?
No, that's fake.
It looks too intimate.
OK, what are you saying?
Fake.
Both saying fake. OK, you are both right. I'll give you both a point, Will. That was very easy. The next one we have, let's have a look at this one. We can pull this up here. Let's have a look. I always work them hard in the gallery, don't I? Which is always good.
No.
This is the touchy-feely one with the Queen. Have you remember this was reports about? This is the previous Queen, Queen Elizabeth. What do you reckon? Fake or fact?
Absolutely fake. There is no way she would allow.
Cameron, you're the royal correspondent. You know this like behind the scenes.
I do know the behind the scenes. I think I can safely say that didn't happen. I think you can see the Photoshop of the picture as well.
It's rather a fun day, but you're absolutely right. Well done, you two.
Although he did break protocol, didn't he? When he
did break protocol, and I think
he walked in front of her when
he didn't give her a big man hug.
Yeah.
He didn't quite go that far.
That would be quite interesting. The next one, let's pull this out. Next slide, please. Let's have a look here. So this was the Congressional Medal of Freedom, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Joe Biden receiving this. Is that fake or fact?
I would say that's fake, because if it was fact, I think Donald Trump would have probably strangled him. We know about it by now.
Cameron.
Do you know, it looks incredibly realistic, but I just can't imagine those two getting on.
You can't imagine it's not about getting on. You know, it's about. So I can tell you that Joe Biden did, in fact, receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2017. He was the first person. Actually, he was vice president at the time, but it wasn't given by Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
It was given. It was in fact given by. Do you know who it was for a point each?
Obama? No.
Obama's good. They're your fastest fingers on the buzzer. I think. Do we have that picture? If we don't, it doesn't matter. But I'll give you both a point. There we are. So it was.
Okay.
But it shows you just to question everything. And also, what's interesting, one of our very own, one of GB News's royalty, received a gong. They went to the palace this year. Do you remember who it was?
Diamond.
It was Anne Diamond. Do you remember what she got?
MBE, wasn't it?
Well, she got an OBE. This is a wonderful picture of her hair. There we go. That's her receiving her OBE, and all credit to her. Doesn't she look wonderful? And here she brought it into the studio one day as well. So we love Anne. There you go. There we are. This is. I don't know who that chap is on next to her. But that's Anne with her glorious medal. Fantastic stuff. Really, really important. What I love about AI, and I always sort of speak about it around the world, back to the Futurist, is the seismic advances in medicine. We've invented cures for diseases and so on and so forth. There's a wonderful thing, a wonderful story about a scientific breakthrough about a woman who was deaf and dumb and had a stroke, couldn't speak for 18 years. 18 years. But through AI, she was able to communicate. Is that fake or fact?
I really hope that's true, because that would be such a lovely story if it was. So I'll say true.
I think it's fake.
You think it's fake?
So
18 years, had a stroke. Well, I can tell you, and it is a lovely story. It was, in fact, true.
Was it?
Which is lovely. So well done, Cameron. Cameron's storming ahead, by the way. It was a lovely story. 18 years she had the stroke, and that shows you the power of AI, because what it did, it could replicate her voice from her wedding. It got a little avatar of her, so she could have a screen and she could animate, and it was a glorious, glorious moment. I predict that in 2024 and beyond, we're going to see so many brilliant changes with medicine advances and so on and so forth, cures for piles, and all those, all those sort of things as well. What I also love, which is a lovely clip here, is the power of sight. Have a look at this little boy.
We don't have it.
Can you explain it?
Oh, we don't have it?
No.
Oh, so what a shame. But this was a wonderful thing when a little boy, for the very first time, could see. And his whole world just changed. He saw his mother for the very first time. And I tell you what, it got me genuinely choked up.
It went viral.
It did go viral, so do check it out. If you can't do it, we'll find that sort of thing. And what I can also tell you, so this is the question, Mr. Beast, do you know who Mr. Beast is? Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast, apart from not the Beast who goes out with Hayley, who's on the chase, Mr. Beast is one of the most popular YouTubers in the world. All the YouTube generations watching us as well will be tuned into Mr. Beast. He's got, I was just checking the latest stats, he has got some incredible figures. I think it's about 222 million people. Now, did he pay, 220 million people watching, did he pay for 1,000 people to see? True or false? Fake or fact?
Yes. Because I suspect he's supremely wealthy now, and that would be a lovely thing to do.
This is a lovely thing to do. What do you reckon?
Do you know, I'll go fake just to be
just to be controversial.
Yeah, just to be controversial.
Cameron, he's so good, isn't he? But you're wrong, Cameron. It was true. It's a lovely story. Do check him out, Mr. Beast. He paid out of his own money to basically make these people see. And do check out the videos. It's probably on his YouTube channel. Should be on ours as well. It's a wonderful thing as well.
I was being too cynical.
You're being too cynical. Next, putting the AI into entertainment. I like to put the AI into Britain. It's right in the centre of everything, isn't it? To take the pain out of AI. A couple of wonderful stories here. Have you seen Wonka?
No, I've seen clips of it.
Yeah, what do you think?
The clips look brilliant.
OK.
Is that Timothy Chalamet?
Oh, well done, is it? Oh, there you go. So he's got this new role in Joker because he is the hot talent at the moment, and he was in Wonka. If you haven't seen it, go and have a look at that. I still prefer the original one because that's like a classic with a wonderful song. But I do think Hugh is wonderful in that as well.
Is he playing the sort of dark Joker? Like
what do you think? So, we saw Joker, wasn't it? Exactly. So it's a fantastic role.
Amazing.
OK. So what do you reckon? Do you reckon he is the man of the moment, Mr. Chalamet? Monsieur Chalamet. What do you reckon? Is he playing the Joker? Is that fake or fact?
Oh, I'm going to say fake.
Fake? Fact? Well, Pip, you are absolutely...
Me wrong.
Wrong again. Absolutely. I don't believe it. Well done, Cameron.
Thank you.
You are storming ahead.
Andrew, thank you to you. Happy New Year.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Andrew Eborn is a barrister and futurist, joins me live on Talk TV. So, I mean, it's a pretty dire choice, isn't it, Andrew?
Oh, absolutely horrendous, Chris. And I love the way that you've been looking at this throughout the show. I've been following the polls as you go along, and you're absolutely right. I mean, reform, it's virtually all there, or spoil your ballot. I was also very interested in the poll, which Ipsos has just put out, with the latest viewing figures. Labour 41%, which is down 5% from November. Conservatives 24%, which is minus 1%. The Liberal Dems are up 1% to 13, and the Green Party is 9%, which is up 3. And basically, a lot of people are changing all the time. So what we need to look at.
Can I just jump in, Andrew? Because I didn't hear reform in that. I don't know whether
they've sort of lumped, and this is interesting, isn't it? Because they don't ask separately for that. What they've said is they put them under others. Now, others are sort of 10%. So I think you're right. If people did a poll based on your brilliant programme, you'd get 100% of the votes, wouldn't you?
But I would, and I should be Prime Minister, and one day let's not rule it out. But,
I would come and support you anytime, Crystal, and I think this is great. What I love about it as well is people need to focus on the policies. This is going to be the first year that AI is going to have a massive impact. Artificial intelligence, the fake news, basically the altered images, the funny recordings are going to get leaked and so on and so forth. This is going to be a fascinating time over the next few months.
Where did those votes go then? You said that the Conservatives, sorry, Labour were down 5 to 41 in that poll. So is that about the margin that other has gone up, or are they spread
looks
out?
like it. And again, I would ask more questions, because I think Reform should get their own little category at the moment, because
in some polls they do.
Sort of turning around if they're not going for one of those. A lot of people are saying on your social media they don't want to vote Labour if they've been Conservative in the past. So people are going over to Reform, and people on Labour side say, well, we don't want to vote Conservatives, but we quite like some of the policies of Reform. What we need to look at are the key sort of policies. What's actually happening out there? What's really going to affect people? Things like housing. If you live in central London, trying to get on the housing ladder at the moment is virtually impossible. There needs to be efficiencies introduced in healthcare at the moment. NHS waiting lists are absolutely appalling, but it's not just about money. A lot of it's to do with efficiencies within the sector as well. And as you know, I speak around the world about being a futurist, about embracing the power of technology, things like artificial intelligence, and how that can speed up a lot of these.
Let's talk about the dark side of AI, though, because certainly when it came to the ultra-low emission zone, when it came to... Actually, Labour seem to have been, unless there are some other examples, but Sadiq Khan and Keir Starmer, I think, both have been victims over the last few months of deep fakes when it comes to really credible as well, and recordings which sound an awful lot like them, but of course are completely made up. Do you think
it was incredible? We had the education secretary who, remember, effing and blinding and saying what an effing good job she did, and then a few nanoseconds later we had a leaked recording of Keir, apparently leaked, of Keir Starmer effing and blinding at an aide who didn't do something properly, and of course that spreads really, really quickly. They always say that the lie goes round the world before the truth has got its boots on, and I think you tell a lie often enough, it becomes the truth.
So do you think we're going to be seeing more of this in the run-up to the election?
Without a doubt. And I think Slovakia, if you look at what happened in the election in Slovakia, 2 days before the election, it was neck and neck. 2 days before the election, there was a leaked recording about somebody saying how they were going to buy some votes and fix it and everything else. And that party lost as a result of it. I can guarantee, as a futurist, it's the biggest prediction of all, you're going to see more faked audio recordings, you're going to see more faked videos, because the power of this sort of stuff is so strong at the moment, and it's getting better all of the time.
Okay, so then also being the cynicist that I am, would there therefore be the potential of almost false flag AI that's put out by the parties themselves? So if the Conservatives, I'm not saying that they would do this, I'm just being very hypothetical here, but if a political party like the Conservatives or Labour, they say, well, actually, if we put out a faked recording of our own leader, actually that's going to lead to people being sympathetic towards us, and actually we might get some votes from the people whom feel sorry for us that we've been the victims of an AI scam. I mean, could there be those sorts of sinister things happening?
Well, without doubt, Christo, you've got your finger absolutely on the pulse, as always. There's a brilliant movie, which I'm sure you know, called Wag the Dog, which was released in 1997, had Dustin Hoffman and Robert De Niro. And basically, Dustin Hoffman was this brilliant Hollywood producer, and to distract people, he faked a war. And what happened is he set out these sort of video images and so on and so forth. And it was just before the Clinton scandal broke with Lewinsky, if you might remember. And they say, look, if you want to draw a crowd, you start a fight. And you're working on that sort of principle where you get these stories getting out there. It's what they call the dead cat syndrome. You distract people by putting the dead cat on the table. Nobody talks about the real issues, just about the dead cat. But there's also, as you rightly say, there's this it's a psychological term about rallying round the flag. If somebody turns around and has something bad said about them, all the people suddenly support them. A classic example of that is my poster boy for AI and fake news, the wonderful Donald Trump. And every time you throw more and more charges at him and won't allow him on the ballot for this, that, and everything else, his people, his supporters, get even stronger, because he tells them, look, this is what's going to happen. They're going to have a pop at me. And boy, are they having a pop at him.
That's really interesting. So I wonder whether there will be that sort of strategy going on. What would you say as a futurist? What would you say is your prediction for this election then? Do you think that it's going to be perhaps the Labour landslide people are talking about? Do you think it might be closer than people think? Do you think that Reform are going to dent the Tories? Or do you think it's all up for grabs and actually we don't know what on earth is going to happen?
Well, I can guarantee this. The next few months, in addition to all the fake recordings and everything else, you're going to start getting these sort of giveaways. So undoubtedly there'll be giveaways on tax. Undoubtedly, I think inheritance tax they're going to look at. You're going to make announcements. The easy 5-point pledge, you sort of turn around. It was going to be easy on inflation because that was a sort of dead cert. Getting the boat sorted. Well, let's make sure there's cold weather because people don't travel in cold weather. But all the things about Rwanda, for example, it was completely rubbish anyway because the whole idea was to prevent people, not that we were going to process people over there, but actually to stop them going there and to stop them setting off in the first place. What we need to do is to look at the real policies that people care about, you know, the choice between heating and eating and so on and so forth. And that narrative is going to get a lot stronger. Keir has sort of turned around. He's got to get his sort of personality. You're right about John Cruddas turning around and saying that he's got to be firmer on these sort of policies. All of these people are basically going to get a PR makeover. And they're going to get better and better at the sound bites. It's interesting here at the moment, the things about Kemi Badenoch and how people are pushing her forward as the next leader, which is a bit defeatist because they're assuming that you're going to need another leader and that Rishi's not going to do it. What I can guarantee is Rishi's going to get more and more popular the closer we get, in the same way as there's going to be a bit more of a shock. It's not going to be the landslide that people think. I do think, and I predicted this years ago when people wrote Trump off, if you remember the Clinton-Trump election, everybody sort of went home thinking, oh, well, Trump's obviously lost. Let's wake up and Hillary's going to be president. The reality was there was a horrendous shock. And I think I was about the only pollster to have predicted that and turn around and say, look, people underestimated Trump. Do not underestimate that side. You have to question everything. I do think Trump will probably, interestingly, get another term in America. And that's going to be very, very interesting as well.
Could be a very interesting election year. Good to talk to you. Thank you. That's Andrew Eborn, a Futurist contributor as well to Talk TV. So where do you stand on all of that? Do you think that we've got an interesting election year? Do you think it's going to be closer than people think? I actually do. I think that people don't like to admit that they want to vote Tory. I think that people don't always like change as much, but also the biggest thing, and this is all up for grabs, and maybe he will change this, but I was mentioning this yesterday when I was talking to Renee and Ben Habib on Breakfast, was that in 97, love him or loathe him, Blair had an offering. Blair said, this is what I want. Blair spent a lot of time creating new Labour. Now, you might have said it ended up being old Labour, but certainly you could say in 97, right, I understand what Blair stands for. And he wants to make the Labour Party more business friendly. And he wants to get rid of Clause 4, which he did, which was their commitment to nationalisation, which moved the party to the right. I want it to be new Labour rather than old Labour. And so you knew what he stood for. You knew that there was an offering. For me, what Keir Starmer is currently offering is that he's not Rishi Sunak or the Tories. And is that enough of an offering to get the kind of landslide and the kind of swing that he's going to need in order to win the election?
The voice of the UK. 5 Live Breakfast.
Hello, yes, good morning. The 1st of January 2020.
Recruitment, but Gordon will have much more on his new show, which starts tonight at 10 o'clock here on 5 Live. And we're going to have much more policing, I should say, across the network throughout January. It's 8:25.
Now, that little old mouse whistling there on a steamboat back in 1928 is now available to the public in the US. What does this mean? Well, it's the copyright on Steamboat Willie, a black and white short animation in which Mickey Mouse made his debut, has expired today. So what does this mean? Well, let's speak to a barrister that specialises in copyright and who helped take Peter Rabbit to Japan. Andrew Eborn is here. Morning, Andrew. Happy New Year.
Good morning and a very happy new year to you too, Johnny. What's interesting is not a very happy new year for Disney because, as you rightly say, they've lost the copyright. It's expired, basically, in their iconic depiction of Mickey Mouse. But it's the one dating all the way back to 1928 and Steamboat Willie. And everybody, if you haven't seen that movie, basically that was a nod to the title of Buster Keaton's film from earlier in the same year, which is called Steamboat Bill Jr. And what happened is it's all to do with copyright. Now, copyright is a bundle of different rights which creators get, which is the right to stop people copying your work. It's the right to make sure they can't adapt it and so on and so forth without your permission. And basically, Disney have been fighting for many years to extend the term of copyright because it doesn't go on forever. So there used to be what was called the Copyright Term Extension Act all the way back in 1998, or sometimes called the Sonny Bono Copyright Term Extension, and rather amusingly, the Mickey Mouse Protection Act. And what that did, it extended the term all the way to 95 years. This is for works which were done under corporate authorship, which happened to Mickey. They extended it to 95 years. And you can work it out very quickly that 1928 to all the way now, those 95 years are up.
Right.
And so that particular Mickey Mouse is indeed available.
It wasn't that there was some sort of admin error and somebody forgot to tick a box and send it off to the copyright offices. So is everything under this law then? Would we see all kinds of characters and Disney stuff eventually fall out of copyright and people be able to remake films? Right.
Absolutely. And I was speaking very recently about Winnie the Pooh, similar sort of thing, the early depictions of him. And it was childhood ruining when the original Winnie the Pooh went out of copyright because there was this horrible horror movie of Winnie the Pooh and, Honey and Horror, or Honey and Blood, I think they called it, which showed these sort of feral Winnie the Pooh together with Piglet going on this murder massacre. So that is the issue. But I think there's two important points to make here. Is firstly that it is only that depiction of Mickey Mouse. So it's the early 1928 Steamboat Willie working on that sort of premise. And so the modern versions obviously continue to enjoy copyright protection. The other point is that there are trademark protections for Disney, and they are notoriously litigious about making sure they protect, and quite rightly too, making sure that they protect their rights. And so when you get trademark protections, those don't expire. You basically can renew those for the relevant period of time. But what that does, it's about brand protection. So the right to slap the particular brand on merchandise, on theme parks and so on and so forth, all those different categories, those continue to subsist. And that's basically to protect that people don't get misled as to the origins of a particular mark.
So we wouldn't see a load of Steamboat Willie T-shirts popping up then and things like that?
Well, it's interesting, and you might, and this is what's going to happen. People are going to be trying to push it a little bit and try and say, well, what can we get away with? And I think that's the sort of key. Disney will be watching very, very carefully as to what people do. But I would urge that people should be checking themselves as to what they do with Steamboat Willie. But also, you mentioned about it's not the only one that's come out of copyright at the same time. You've got not just Steamboat Willie, but you've got Lady Chatterley's Lover. D.H. Lawrence has just come out under the same sort of principle. You've got the Threepenny Opera in the original German, that's finished, and Virginia Woolf's Orlando. So there could be lots and lots of these sort of issues. My best advice to anybody is if you are thinking about copyright or trying to use it in any particular way, do get in touch because getting your rights right is essential for any rights owner.
What happens? What happens if you don't, if you're found to be breaking copyright or trademarks? What's the worst
Well, the great
penalty?
thing is, it's rather like any property law. It's equivalent to theft. So what they do, there are penalties that can be done, mainly sort of financial penalties. You're going to put them in the same position they would have been if they hadn't infringed those rights. You can also have what's called delivery up if they're infringing goods. In other words, if you print lots of T-shirts which have somebody's rights on it or a particular mark, then they could be delivered up and destroyed. So you don't just lose the licensing income, but you lose the manufacturing costs and everything else as well. So they're quite severe penalties. And I would urge everybody, it's a minefield. I know we do a merry dance on this glorious New Year's Day just to give the highlights, but it is a minefield and people do need to tread incredibly carefully. The great news, however, is that every one of your glorious listeners is in fact a copyright owner, because everything that you write, which you create, which you come up with your own tunes, or you come up with particular artwork, you basically get the rights in those, and it gives you the exclusive right to make sure that nobody copies those works. Obviously, and I work with a wonderful artist called Eleanor Tomlinson, who I met on a BBC programme, another channel, and she was the one who came up with the iconic image of the Queen with Paddington Bear, you might remember, which was ripped off royally during that particular year. And I helped tidy up the rights for her. She's now got licensing deals around the world, is now doing very comfortably indeed. But it really was starting out and understanding what the rights are and making sure that they are adequately protected.
OK, good stuff. We know where to go if we need some advice. Thank you very much, Andrew. Andrew Eborn there, barrister that specialises in copyright. Be careful what you do with Steamboat Willie.
Yes, that's sage advice.